So we're team automating visuals, like Lakshmi said, from Gannett and McClatchy. And just a quick introduction for the team members here on the call today with us. Theresa will go through the second half of the presentation. She is a product manager with McClatchy. We have Tyler Dukes, an investigative reporter from McClatchy, Mike Stuka, former national data solutions editor at Gannett, and myself, a product manager for Gannett. So we began with a challenge and a goal with this project to generate engaging imagery for automated content. Theresa, do you mind advancing the slides? One more? There we go. So like I said, generating engaging imagery for automated content. What inspired us to reach this goal was examining these go-to images that are often used for home sales or any other real estate content that our companies produce. It's often this generic exterior of a house with a for sale sign out front. It's pretty much the standard imagery used for real estate coverage across the board. Stories like this are often difficult to illustrate even when there's a human editor or producer involved with selecting or creating the art. And so we thought, what if we could instantly create a social media visual to promote those stories across platforms, or create dozens of data visualizations from the key facts of the story, or even hundreds of these stories, or leveraging data to create more engaging imagery for these stories. Next slide. And that repetitive imagery led us to further examine that real estate beat. It's a beat with high reader interest, and it's rich in data, and it's present in pretty much every market, but it's really hard to find compelling visuals for those stories. And so we found it as the perfect entry point for harnessing machines to help trudge through the drudgery of this image selection, especially at scale. So we also realized not all stories get prioritized treatment with original art and strong photography, but they need that type of imagery to cut through the noise and engage readers. So we looked to create a tool that wouldn't replace what photographers and graphic artists and illustrators do today, but one that helps enrich the storytelling on our own websites, but also fills the gap created by this increasingly growing number of real estate content and the diversity of platforms that it shows up on. Next slide. So to start getting at this problem, we created a simple low-res prototype as a one-stop shop that gave us some insight into how a user could go about creating this type of image. It was a simple workflow that mocked up how we would automate some sort of image generation from text and data input from these real estate stories. So from this prototype, we conducted user research interviews with various producers and photographers and journalists between both of our companies, just generally people who would be interested in using this tool. And one thing that they mentioned as being critical to the workflow in creating these stories is the difficulty in creating social cards, and that building a social card generator or automation would be really, really helpful in their daily workflows. But that user research also led us to broaden the scope beyond automatically generated content. They mentioned things like vendors and third-party contractor content that comes in with not very strong visuals, anything that doesn't have bespoke photography, things like that could really benefit from this type of content. And to get towards that, we also had to examine the best approach in tech stack to complete the project. And we had to weigh whether or not we wanted to write our own bespoke code from scratch or use an off-the-shelf tool or a third-party vendor to get towards this goal. And the drawbacks to using a vendor included high costs of enterprise plans, difficulty accessing their APIs, but I think most critically, reliance on an outside source to maintain a huge part of our project's infrastructure. it would be a really big lift to salvage the project, especially long term. Say one of these platforms that we leveraged went out of business or was acquired and sunset their part of the process. So we ended up using sort of a semi-bespoke option by jumping off with a similar project's code base from Gannett colleagues in the UK. And the result of that is what Theresa will take you through now.
All right, thanks, Sean. So we built EUCHRE, which is named for a card game with weird rules that's popular in the US Midwest. And Mike Stuka, who's on the call here today too, and will be available to answer questions, took the lead in building this. And as you can see, it's a tool that allows you to take a string of text that you input and combines it with a background photo to create a composite image that can be used for sharing on social media. This is available on GitHub right now, so you can download this and run it locally on your computer. The goal here was to create something that would make templating and interactivity easy and also allow some opportunities for basic automation. So you can also find on GitHub some instructions on how to get started with running some basic automations on this. So this could be run as a standalone app, or it could be made into a hosted service. The tech stack here includes Python, Flask, and Pillow, which is the Python image library. So we are hoping to continue work on EUCHRE, and a next step would be to utilize machine learning to generate the text that would go into the social card. So you probably noticed on the last slide, on that screen recording, that text that goes into EUCHRE right now is predefined. So someone has to pick that and put that into the template. Now, we see there's a real opportunity with using machine learning to automate this piece, to extract or summarize a story. So for example, extracting could mean pulling a headline or a lead sentence. But I think the bigger opportunity here would be to actually use technology that would allow us to summarize the content to pull out and create a new phrase that could be used to populate the social card. While we didn't have time to build this out, during the fellowship, Tyler Dukes, our teammate, took the lead in investigating the different options. And one of the best candidates is something that's been mentioned in a few different presentations today. It's called Python. I'm sorry, it's called Spacey. It's a Python library. So beyond building the tool itself, there was a lot that we learned about how to approach AI through the lens of journalism. And right now, synthetic media creation, AI generated content is just exploding. And I think one of the best ways to kind of understand the real opportunities and challenges in the space is to get hands-on with it. So a few of our takeaways from working on this project was, first, human input and oversight by subject matter experts is incredibly important at every phase of this kind of work. So as one of our colleagues put it, if EUCHRE would be adopted in a newsroom, we would really need oversight, a bulletproof checks and balances process to make sure visuals are accurate, they're up to date, and that we have the rights to use any images that are involved. And the other subject matter expertise that is critical to include in something like this is, in addition to photographers, real estate reporters, editors, and graphic designers. And I want to reiterate something that Sean mentioned earlier, which is that one of our values in creating this project was that we're not seeking to replace the work of what our colleagues are doing right now. So on this slide are a few examples of some illustrations, photography that our colleagues in our organizations have produced around real estate. And this is the kind of work that cannot be matched by AI. So this example output from DALL-E, I think is a really good illustration of where AI image generation can fall short. And while this illustration generated by DALL-E is really interesting looking, the tool is really powerful, where it falls short, what it lacks is relevance. And AI should really help us in the pursuit to seek the truth. And as we're thinking about distribution of stories across platforms, we believe the best way to sell a story, so to speak, is to bring that pertinent information to the forefront. And, our thinking is social cards made with EUCHRE would bring imagery closer to the story and not farther from the facts. So, well, thank you for taking time to listen to our presentation today, and we're excited to answer some questions.